write this down, underline it. The first reason why Kennedy's aides did not want him to visit Dallas, Texas is that right-wing extremists made a major scene with Adlai Stevenson while he spoke in Dallas. Right-wing extremists made a major scene with Adlai Stevenson when he spoke in Dallas. Right-wing extremists made a major scene with Adlai Stevenson when he spoke in Dallas. What is Adlai's position? U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. And on October 24th of 1963, he gave a speech in Dallas because they had a United Nations Day program there. So in October of 1963, a month before the president's visit, United Nations Ambassador Adlai Stevenson had visited Dallas, Texas, and he spoke at UN Day. And there were about 2,000 people that attended his speech that day, and of those 2,000, about 100 were right-wing extremists who basically were there to show their disdain for the United Nations. So picture this in your mind. Adlai Stevenson's getting prepared to give a speech at UN Day on October 24th, 1963. There's about 2,000 people attending his speech. About 100 of those were right-wing extremists who simply were there to cause trouble and show their disdain for the United Nations. Well, during his speech, they disrupted Stevenson on several occasions, including doing these things. While he's speaking, the first thing they're doing is they're all coughing in cadence while he's speaking. They're going like, and they're just disrupting his speech by coughing in cadence. They're also just yelling and shouting during his speech. Very disrespectful. During his speech, they're just yelling and shouting. Yelling and shouting during his speech. And they're walking in the aisles as he's speaking, carrying U.S. flags hung upside down, which is a signal of distress. Is this the money that I Okay? So they're walking the aisles carrying U.S. flags upside down. It got so bad that at one point in his speech, Stevenson paused and stated, quote, "Surely, my dear friends, I don't have to come here from Illinois to teach Texas manners, do I?" That's what he said. He was so upset at the way he was being treated that he finally paused during his speech and stated, quote, "Surely, my dear friends, I don't have to come here from Illinois to teach Texas manners, do I?" Well, after his speech, as he was exiting, one woman even hit him over the head with her protest sign, and he was spat upon as he was getting into his car. So he was treated very, very poorly. He was treated very disrespectful when he spoke. As he exited his speech, he was hit over the head with a protest sign, and he was even spat upon. That was one reason why Kennedy's aides did not want him to go to Dallas, because they didn't want to see him treated disrespectfully as Adlai Stevenson was, and they thought he surely could be. Okay? The second reason why his aides is Dallas was the absolute center in Texas for what they considered the far right. Dallas was the absolute center of Texas for the people that were considered on the far right. Now, there was a couple of guys that were really out there, so to speak. One was Robert Welch, really a big-time extreme right-winger, way to the right. And he was the founder of an organization called the John Birch Society. Anybody heard of the John Birch Society? Very, very ultra conservative people. Very conservative. So they were not friends of a liberal President Kennedy. So one of the most visible members of the far right in Dallas was Robert Welch. He was the founder of the John Birch Society, which was a highly conservative group. They once referred to President Eisenhower as, quote, a dedicated, conscious agent of the communist conspiracy. These people called President Eisenhower probably the greatest American we ever had, a communist. These guys were really to the right. Now, another one, and you're going to hear, this is an interesting deal, we'll set you up a little bit. Another really far right-winger at the time in Dallas was a retired Army Major General by the name of Edwin Walker. Edwin Walker. And he was a big supporter of Welch and the John Birch Society. Retired Army Major General Edwin Walker was a huge supporter of Robert Welch and the John Birch Society. He was an incredibly outspoken anti-communist as well. And in April of 1963, someone tried to assassinate Edwin Walker while he was sitting in his home in Dallas. A guy shot at him, and his head was, if you picture this, this is what windows looked like at the time, and they had those lead dividers, and Walker was sitting in here, and this was his head as he was working at his desk, and a person shot at him and actually hit the lead from the window, which ricocheted the bullet away from him. It went up and hit the wall above his head and even had plaster in his hair. That assassin would escape and was never found for that crime. Anybody want to guess who that guy was that shot at General Walker in April of 1963? Lee Harvey Oswald, who ended up shooting the president. And I'm just going to get ahead of myself. When we talk about the president's assassination conspiracy, etc., if you don't know the Edwin Walker story, you don't know anything about the assassination and have no right to make a determination on conspiracy or no. Matter of fact, friends of mine that you will speak to, that we'll talk about later, that we'll get on the phone and talk with, will not even speak to anyone if they do not know the Edwin Walker story. And we'll get to that later. So, that was the second reason why Kennedy's aides did not want him to go to Dallas, because it was the absolute center of the far right in Texas. The third reason why Kennedy's aides did not want him to go to Texas is simply the people of Dallas were very outspoken against his policies. They did not like him. The people of Dallas were simply outspoken against the president's policies. And I'm going to give you two examples of how the people in Dallas were so outspoken against his policies. What you have handing out to you right now is what they call at the time a handbill. And these were being distributed by agitators along the president's parade route when he was in Dallas. Okay? Many were left lying in the streets after the assassination. And it's basically a picture like the president's in prison, wanted for treason. This man is wanted for treasonous activities against the United States. 1. Betraying the Constitution, which he swore to uphold. He is turning the sovereignty of the U.S. over to the communist-controlled United Nations. He is betraying our friends, Cuba, Cotolenga, Portugal, and befriending our enemies, Russia, Yugoslavia, Poland. 2. He has been wrong on innumerable issues affecting the security of the United States, United Nations, Berlin Wall, missile removal, Cuba, wheat deals, test ban treaty, etc. 3. He has been lax in enforcing communist registration laws. 4. He has given support and encouragement to the communist-inspired radical riots. 5. He has illegally invaded a sovereign state with federal troops. 6. He has constantly appointed anti-Christians to federal office, upholds the Supreme Court and its anti-Christian rulings, aliens and known communist abound in federal offices, and 7, he has been caught in fantastic lies to the American people, including personal ones like his previous marriage and divorce. Never was previously married or divorced. But these handbills were all over. I'm going to tell you, if you can find one of these, they're worth thousands of dollars, because most were swept up quickly during the president's visit in Dallas. But this gives you an example. Can you imagine handing something like this out before a president came? You might, maybe more today, but not in 1963. Okay? The second example of the people of Dallas being outspoken against President Kennedy's policies was a black border ad that appeared in the Dallas Morning News on Friday morning, November 22nd, 1963. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, gee whiz, these things didn't happen until the day he got there, so, why are we bringing them up? Because what his aides thought proved true, that the people of Dallas were very outspoken against his policies, and these are examples of what they were. Now, this was a black border ad that appeared in the Dallas Morning News on Friday, November 22nd, 1963. And I'm not going to read all through it, but I want you to take your pencil, and at the bottom of that I want you to circle the name Bernard Wiseman, chairman, because we're going to come back to that guy after the assassination. These are incredibly rare, and I just happen to have an original. Right up there right above where it says John F. Kennedy, I have an original out of the Dallas Morning News in that frame. That is worth hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. You cannot find it. And so here it is, right here. Now these are examples. As we move on and talk to you about this, Kennedy was very good at listening to his staff and advisors. But after listening to these concerns that we've talked about, Kennedy simply agreed to disagree, and he did not believe that he could go to the state of Texas and skip the state's second largest city. So he overruled all of his aides and decided he would go to Dallas. Why was he wanting to go to Dallas? Well, let me give you some examples. Okay? Concerning his re-election in 1964, his job approval rating in November of 1963, his job approval rating dropped from 76% to 59%. That was a concern of his, okay? And he did not want to skip Dallas, a big city where he could talk about job approval and what he was going to do for jobs, because his rating had dropped so dramatically from the time he was elected to November of 63, from 76% to 59%. Why did he lose job approval? Especially, his overall job approval in the North was pretty good. But because of his low job approval in the South, it balanced up to 59%. Why were people in the South mad at Kennedy? Why did they speak against his policies? Why did they treat him poorly? Or they had the ability to treat him poorly? We weren't sure yet. What are they mad about? What's the civil rights? No question about it. Very good. They're mad about his civil rights efforts. Okay? And so they are crushing him in the polls. So the biggest reason for the sudden drop in job approval was the South's response to President Kennedy's support of civil rights. And the president knew that this race in '64 was no gimme. He was very concerned that he could beat the Republican nominee for president in '64. Very concerned. And he thought a good appearance in Texas and a good appearance in Dallas, a city that did not particularly care for him, would be crucial to winning that state and then winning the re-election. You follow me on this? So he has to go to Dallas in his mind, and he has to have a positive experience in Dallas. And you know, a little prelude, he has an incredibly positive experience until 12:30 p.m. on November 22nd. From the time he lands in Dallas till he is shot, everything is going perfect for him. It's exactly what he wanted. Okay? Now, he knew that he would have a tough opponent in '64. There were two people that historians projected would win the Republican nomination in '64. to run against him. One we've heard of before. You remember Governor Nelson Rockefeller of New York? He was going to make a serious bid for the presidency, was the rumor in politics at the time. The other name will be kind of familiar. Michigan Senator George Romney was another one that was going to vie for the Republican nomination. Whose father is that? Mitt Romney's father. Very good. So Kennedy really wanted to have a good appearance in Dallas. He thought it was crucial to the upcoming re-election effort, and he knew his likely Republican opponent in the election of 1964 would either be Governor Nelson Rockefeller of New York or Michigan Senator George Romney. That's what he knew at the time. Okay, we'll finish up today with the Texas agenda. I'm just going to tell you what his agenda was for the trip to Texas. Okay? And it's very important you know this. This was a two-day agenda. It was going to be Thursday, November 21st, 1963, and Friday, November 22nd, 1963. This was the agenda in Texas. What he was going to do in Texas. We'll start with Thursday. Very simply, on Thursday, November 21st, 1963, President Kennedy was going to depart the nation's capital, and he was going to fly first to San Antonio, then to Houston. And what was he going to do there? Inspect military installations. Okay? So, he was going to fly to San Antonio, then to Houston. He was going to inspect military installations in Houston. When he got done with his military inspections in Houston, he would then fly to Fort Worth and stay for the evening. That's what he was doing on Thursday, November 21st, 1963. Inspecting military installations first in San Antonio, then in Houston, and then he was going to leave Houston that evening and fly into Fort Worth. Okay? Friday, November 22nd, in Fort Worth, he would attend a breakfast speech for the Chamber of Commerce. In other words, he's going to give a big speech at the Chamber of Commerce in Fort Worth. After his speech in Fort Worth, at the Chamber of Commerce breakfast, he was going to make a short flight to Dallas. And we'll get into way detail on this whole thing. What he does in San Antonio, what he does in Houston, what he does in Fort Worth. Okay? So after his speech in Fort Worth, he's going to go to Dallas. Here is what he was going to do in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963. This is what was supposed to happen. First of all, he was going to land at Love Field in Dallas. He was going to land in Love Field in Dallas and have an 11-mile motorcade trip through downtown Dallas. I already told them no.
Oh, they're here, so I just checked.
No, we're good. So, first thing, he was going to land at Love Field in Dallas, and then he was going to have an 11-mile motorcade trip through downtown Dallas. Second thing he was going to do, after he had his motorcade through downtown Dallas, he was going to attend a luncheon where he was going to give a speech at the Trade Mart. At the Trade Mart. You know what the Trade Mart would be? It'd be like the Casper Events Center or Rimrock Auto Center in Billings, a venue like that. Okay? So after his 11-mile motorcade trip through downtown Dallas, he was going to attend a luncheon at the Trade Mart in Dallas. About 2,500 guests were going to be there to listen to him speak. After his luncheon speech at the Trade Mart, he was going to depart Dallas and fly to Austin, Texas, where he was going to speak at a $100 a plate dinner, which at that time was pretty good money. So after his speech at the Trade Mart in Dallas, where he would address 2,500 luncheon guests, he was going to depart Dallas for Austin and speak at a $100 a plate dinner there. And then he was going to depart Austin after that speech, take a 90-mile ride, and spend the night at Lyndon Johnson's ranch in Stonewall, Texas. So that was the president's agenda. Land at Love Field, 11-mile motorcade trip through downtown Dallas, attend a luncheon speech at the Trade Mart in Dallas where he would address 2,500 luncheon guests. He then would depart Dallas for Austin to speak at a $100 a plate dinner there, and then he would depart Austin for a 90-mile ride to spend the night at Lyndon Johnson's ranch in Stonewall. How far did he get? only landing and not quite through the 11-mile motorcade route. That's where it ended. Okay, tomorrow we will talk in detail about the Dallas Police Department preparing for the president, what he does in San Antonio, what he does in Houston, what he does in Fort Worth. Okay, we'll just continue that in detail.